So superpowers, the one thing that I'm sure all of us wanted as kids. Hell, I'm sure a vast majority of us will still want it now. But the thing is, superpowers actually aren't as good as we think they are. In fact, if people actually had powers, the world would probably be completely different than what we see in the movies or shows or any kind of fictional media. Now, as we know, having powers is completely unrealistic. Like, come on, could you imagine a dude running past your house at the speed of sound or something, bruh? Now, I'm sure you guys have probably heard the saying, powers are more of a curse than a blessing, or something like that. And obviously, we just choose to ignore that, because in our childish light minds, having powers is probably the coolest thing we could ever ask for. But in this video, I'm going to explain to you guys why having powers is genuinely probably the worst thing that humans could ever ask for, and why you should never want them. And the way we're going to be going about this is by breaking down 6 common powers that most people would say they'd want. Starting with the first one. Flight. Now, I really don't understand why people would want this ability. I mean, yeah, it'd be cool flying through the sky. You would never have to drive. You'd get to work a lot faster and things like that. But what you gonna do when an airplane flies by you and chops you up like Trunks did to Frieza? Because you're not gonna be immortal or have invulnerability or anything like that. You just gonna have the ability to fly. And who's to say you're gonna be able to fly fast either? Shoot, the fastest you could go is probably like 10 miles an hour while floating or something. And also, could you imagine the bugs that you're gonna be swallowing while you're flying all the time? Mosquitoes, flies, crickets, shoot, even birds. All them birds gonna think you're just a fellow bird and they're gonna want to peck you and shit like that. And next thing you know, when you finally land at your destination, you're gonna be looking like Freddy Krueger. And even if you could fly fast and you start practicing and things like that, there's not really any room for trial and error. Because if you're flying through a city and you smack into a building, gonna be looking like that one girl Homelander made jump off a building. Now, the next ability that I want to talk about is super strength. Bro, do you understand how hard it would be to maintain or master this ability? And do you know how many people are gonna get hurt or even killed along the way? Because again, as I said earlier, you're not gonna have room for trial and error. If you meet somebody and you accidentally shake their hand a little too hard, you're gonna literally handicap that man for life. Shoot, we can even take it a step further and talk about hugs if you want to. The second you go in for a hug and press a little too hard, you'd sever their back and make them look like a folded lawn chair. And yeah, maybe you would master it after about killing 610 people, but what would even be the point? You'd have the entire United Nations on your back and everyone would absolutely despise you and make you out to be a serial killer. But the reality of it is that you were just a guy who was cursed with the ability and was just trying to find his way with it. I mean, literally everywhere you'd go, you'd literally just be a walking brute. Your boy gives you a pat on the back, you give him a pat on the back, and next thing you know, his spine goes flying across the entire room, and then you'd be charged with manslaughter. And if this ability really does go public and everyone finds out about your power, I don't even think the government would want to hire you or have you fight for the country or anything like that, because you'd be more of a nuisance than an actual asset to the United States Army, or any army for that matter. Which brings me to my next ability. Super speed. Alright, now super speed honestly might be the worst on this list. I'm not gonna lie to you. Because 1, you couldn't run past 100 miles an hour or else you're gonna literally catch on fire. And 2, through your journey of trying to master this ability, you would definitely run into a lot of people and absolutely disintegrate them. I mean, look at what A-Train did to that one girl. That literally ran through her. Now let's go ahead and make the assumption that you ended up mastering the ability somehow without killing anyone. Realistically, what would you really do with this ability? Be a superhero? Absolutely not. Because I know no one here would have the courage or the balls to actually be a hero. Most of y'all would just use it for ways to get money or to make your day-to-day life easier. But other than that, this ability would be more of a curse than a blessing. Now, the next ability I want to talk about is probably the only world-threatening ability on this list. And that ability is being able to time travel. Now, you might be thinking, oh, time travel. Probably the most useful ability on this list. I can go back in time and save a loved one. I can go back in time to tell my younger self to invest in Bitcoin. I could also save my younger self from that time I was trying to do a backflip in the middle of the classroom to impress everybody. Even while knowing that I was a 230-pound 5'5" fat kid at the age of 11 years old, for some reason I thought it was a good idea. Don't judge me. With all kinds of those positive and illusional thoughts running through your head, you're probably thinking that time travel would probably put you in the best spot currently. You're probably thinking that time traveling to the past and correcting any major mistake would put you in a better spot today, but the truth is that doing that would make your current life hell. And I mean worse than it is currently. And if you think your life is hell now, it would definitely be worse after you would go back in time. Certain events would never have taken place for you to become the person that you are today. You'd have nothing to be proud of because you never overcame any mistakes, and all your accomplishments would feel pretty much hand delivered to you, and then you probably end up in a state of depression for the rest of your life. Now let's talk about going to the future, which in my opinion is absolutely worse. You'd be so obsessed with the future to where you'd be watching every step you take like a hawk to make sure that your future is perfect, but in doing so you'd probably just make it worse than what it already would have been. Now the next power I want to talk about is shapeshifting. With Secret Invasion being right around the corner, this ability really doesn't need much of an explanation, other than the fact that you would just be someone else every single time you're using this ability. And in doing so, every time you'd come back to your normal self, you would just look at yourself in the mirror and feel more and more insecure because you can't truly be those people that you're turning into. And also because this ability could literally be used for world domination. I mean, you could literally just walk into any government facilitation and set off nukes and cause nuclear war, which would end the world in, wait, hold on, how fast will the world end? 15 minutes. We'd have 15 minutes to live. But that's just if you would use this ability to do bad things. And I would try and make a counter argument for if you would try and use it for being a hero, but honestly, I don't really know what you would try and do. I mean, I guess you could go undercover in criminal organizations and things like that and get intel, but other than that, this ability is pretty useless. Now, the next and final cursed ability that I want to talk about is Immortality. Alright, first things first. For anyone who doesn't know what this ability is, there are actually two different versions of this ability. One where you just live forever and you basically can't die of old age. And then the other one is basically where you can't take any damage. Or actually you can take damage, but you just pretty much regenerate from it. Like Deadpool. But for time's sake, we're just gonna combine both versions. Alright, first things first, the obvious. You would literally just outlive everybody around you. Your loved ones would die, your dog would die, and pretty much every creature on the planet would die before you would even live a fraction of your lifespan. So you basically would either live a life of isolation, or you would constantly have to keep meeting new people after every 60 years or so. A lot of people say they'd like to live forever, but the truth is that this is probably the worst ability on this list. I mean, yeah, over time you'd pretty much learn everything there is to learn on this planet, and you would probably be looked at as a god in about 5,000 years or so, assuming humans are even still around at that time. Judging by the shit that's happening in this world today, it seems very unlikely, but I don't know, we'll see. Another point I want to talk about with this ability is that there is a lot of ways you could do good, such as working as a firefighter, a policeman, military soldier. You got nothing but time, so you could serve for all three and more. But the worst part about it is that you would only die if the entire universe just explodes. And even at that point, there's a good chance you might even live from that. Because like I said, immortality is basically just not dying, no matter what's thrown at you. Take Deadpool, for example. But anyways, that's all I gotta say.